There's 3 tiers of art. There's high art, there's pop art, and then there's low art.
Right.
And then there's Forces of Good and Evil.
Yeah, that is way down there. That was fun. Ladies and gentlemen, it's another Wednesday. It's another episode of the Mattriarcy. I am not sure I numbered this one correctly. I threw it together so quick. I don't even have a proper thumbnail. I just grabbed something that said Superman on it from my picture file and threw it up there. Because, I'm off my game, everybody. But I am pleased as punch to be joined with our illustrious panel today. We have, of course, on sounds and effects, we've got the metal.
Hey.
Over there. And then a special guest as Shabby, coming from somewhere in Eastern Europe.
Howdy, everyone.
You told me one time and I forgot, but that's okay. We can move on. And because I am an ugly American.
It's not hard to remember Czechia.
Yeah. It's quite forgettable. It's fine. Sometimes I don't even remember.
Yeah, okay. I don't want to keep talking about what I don't know. Let's move on. So we've also got Chuck Bonetti with us today, who has not been around for a spell, but we're glad to have him. We've got Twitless coming on here, who might be away from his desk. I don't know.
Sorry,
but that's okay.
I muted myself. Hey,
no. It's fine, man. It's fine. I'm not trying to throw shade at all today. And Larry on the end.
Oh, hoy.
That end over there. I'm never going to get used to this whole thing. I don't know why I have this. I'll tell you why I have this laid out this way and this nice line across the bottom. It's because I wanted to highlight somebody who we weren't able to. It's a whole thing. Cartoonicus had this conversation last week somewhere on some platform that might be Facebook. I don't know. And I thought it was so great that because we were already going to have this topic, and he shared this with me, and I said, that's perfect. Because tonight's show, we're going to talk about replacement Superman, which is just the fact that, like, everybody's got to have a Superman, but there's really only one, but there's really, like, hundreds. So the idea is that we're all going to talk about maybe not our favorite replacement Superman, but kind of what hits us about him and all that kind of stuff. It's loose, it's free forming, it's whatever the whole business is, and we're doing it live. If
we talk about our favorite, we'd all have to say it's a Make Girl, right, Twitless?
Yep. I was gonna say this is a hard one for me because I have a default answer. It's not even just a default answer. I really do feel that way. But I've got someone to share today. We're all good.
Okay. So
I actually got a hot take too. So,
well, the one thing I want to go ahead and just knock off from the beginning, right? Everybody is going to say, a collection of people that are going to say every superhero is a knockoff Superman because Superman started them all, and to that, I say fie on you, because there's very little intersection between the Batmans of the universe and the Supermans of the universe. Even like Spider-Man is not fit, doesn't really intersect there in that thing. There are shades and there are differences in the basic archetype. Just because Superman may have been the first to put on the tiny shorts does not mean that everybody is Superman. We had
we could have a whole stream on that debate. Don't get me started.
Yeah. I was gonna say because Superman technically isn't even the first. So
I was gonna say to that end, I think you can make a case that Superman, everyone's a copy of Superman, just because depending on where you fall philosophically on that whole concept.
Well, where does Doc Savage come in?
Well, hold up. I was about to get into that, though.
He's not technically a superhero according to Peter Coogan's nomenclature of what makes an actual superhero in the genre.
But I mean, Superman was an adaptation of Hugo Danner, And Hugo Danner really told all the archetypes of every superhero story more or less in his one book.
He's more of a science fiction Superman, which is it's a different subgenre of science fiction. The superhero genre establishes its own rules, and this is
Yeah, well, then you also have where Superman technically is a repackaged Moses.
oh gosh.
I mean, that's really what he is.
So I think moving forward, actually, this is a helpful detour, because I think before we really do get started, we do need to establish, at least for the benefit of this conversation, what do we define as a replacement Superman? So yeah, everyone's a copy of Adam and Eve.
And that really gets to, on a side note, my own little take on this thing is really Superman. It's just the whole concept of the superhero. It is a fomentation of previous hero stories in a lot of ways, isolated into a American milieu, right? So you definitely are going to have shades of this kind of thing that echo back through literary history all the way back to Gilgamesh, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
I think you all are going way too in depth with this, because if you're copying Superman, you go for the most obvious characteristics. So you'll copy the power set, right?
Yeah.
The super strength, the toughness, maybe the laser eyes.
Yeah.
That's the baseline, I think, right? That's your copy, and then you can kind of like add on bullshit to make it not
So
Superman.
Yeah, because here you also got what version of Superman? Are we talking 1930 Superman? Are we talking 50s Superman? 60s Superman? Are we talking modern day Superman?
I want to add to what Shabby is saying. I think that the power set is very important, and there's obviously different shades of that, but there's clearly an archetype of what the Superman character created, and the reason why we know that is because there's so many copies. The second thing I would say that I think is important to picking a character like this is I think the character he doesn't just have the powers. He has either what I would say an iconicity, or he has he represents something much larger than himself.
Right.
He can be good or bad, but he needs to be there's a reason why Superman wears the chevron on his chest. He represents something much larger than him. He represents something very grand, and whether it's truth, justice, in the American way, or if you want to go with Red Sun, the Soviet way, whatever it is, he's still he's a symbol. He's meant to be not just have powers, because there's lots of characters in fiction who have powers, characters who have more. If we go into manga, there's characters who have more power than Superman, but there's a artistic archetype with the look, but there's also, I think, like I said, what that character means to the audience, I think, is very significant. So we know when we say Superman archetype, we know that we're talking about someone who usually stands for something.
Right. And I think that's really one of the things that's fun about Superman's place in history, right? Is in being the in a lot of ways the first superhero, not hero with powers, as we discussed, but actually distilling down that concept of making that special sauce that makes superhero fiction different from just crime fiction, different from just science fiction, different from just fantasy, right? All of those things kind of play together, but the superhero itself is its own kind of combination of that special sauce. Mm-hmm. And I think I while other people have that in play, you've got Zorro, who's got a little piece of that. Hugo Danner's got a big piece of that, but you have Robin Hood's got a piece of that, and the Scarlet Pimpernel's got a piece of that. Superman was I haven't seen a better case for somebody who, at least on the level of his stage, was able to take all of those pieces and put them together into something that becomes new, right? That moment that, to use a music metaphor, that rhythm and blues becomes rock and roll, right? That hits those notes where, okay, we're dealing with something that has its roots in all of these other things, but it's still something new, right?
Yep.
I think there's a third leg to this stool. The first leg of the stool is the powers. The second leg of the stool is they're a paragon. They're an icon that represents something. And the third leg of the stool, which is what makes the Superman character and most of the best ones that are similar to it, is they're a normal guy from whatever society they're in. So you take something like the Plutonian as an example. The Plutonian was a normal guy who broke under the pressure of his expectations. Superman is just a normal dude from Kansas. Billy Batson is a normal kid who's gifted with the powers of demigods.
Okay. I actually like that point. I like that point. Yeah, that's fun. That's fun. Especially like looking at one of my favorite bailiwicks in terms of mythology is looking at the Celtic legends, and the heroes are by in nature of what they are, they're seldom normal people. Right?
You see a little bit of that in Greek, though. Like, if you actually look at the beginning of Heracles, he grew up under his dad, who was a fisher, and he fished with him until he became Heracles.
Right. Ooh, I like it. That's fun to think about. Fun to think about how those things kind of play together. Okay.
And I was going to say, if you also look at a lot of your other, your knockoffs, most of them, like Larry said, they are normal characters. Look at the Homelander. His origin is very. He was raised in how can I say this? Well, let's shift that. One Punch Man. You look at Saitama from One Punch Man, which we clearly know is a parody of Superman. In that universe, and he's a normal guy.
Or he wants to be a normal guy. I think there's a place in there to look at. Like I'm going to forget one from. Good gravy. Invincible, right? The Omega Man from Invincible.
Omni-Man,
right?
Yeah,
Omni-Man, where he represents or he puts forward or he has a certain desire for a normalcy, or the appearance of normalcy, even though he's definitely not really truly the normal guy.
Yeah, but Saitama he was a normal salary man, and then he broke his limit and became what we know, the Cape Baldy.
Yeah.
And I think that could be how we differentiate the evil Superman type, because they're always the ones who fail at being normal.
Yep, I would agree with that.
They're evil.
I would agree with that completely. Because if you look at like Sentry or Homelander, once again, they failed at being normal, and they want to instill that on everybody else. Their ideal of normal.
I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to say that sometimes the evil Superman is the Superman who succeeds too much at being normal.
Could be.
The point.
I would agree with that.
Well, which one are you referring to? Just so I can see if I agree with you.
So the point is that as a superhero, especially a paragon, one who stands head and shoulders above the rest and representing what is good, right, and true in many cases, Superman actually represents humanity overcoming all of his impulses and overcoming things like jealousy, greed, lust, and everything else. And so evil Supermen are often the ones who give in to the temptation to use their power for their own selfish ends, or give in to using their powers to pursue, something that they desire, as opposed to, giving it up in a sort of Christ-like way. And
Homelander is a perfect example of that.
Right.
In many ways.
One example of that kind of a character, and I wouldn't necessarily have thought of him as a Superman type, but in a lot of ways he is, with that idea of the Paragon, is Ozymandias from Watchmen.
Yes.
Right? He's willing to sacrifice his personal morality for the sake of what he believes a good future is. So he is still being, in his own mind, sacrificial, even though he's, by enforcing his view of the world on the world against his will, he's in fact being tyrannical. But he believes he's being so sacrificial, he's sacrificing his own moral station to do it.
I would agree with that. So more than, say, Dr. Manhattan being the Superman, I would say Ozymandias is definitely more the Superman character from the Watchmen universe than Dr. Manhattan. Even though Dr. Manhattan is the most powerful thing, I would say Ozymandias much more so than Dr. Manhattan.
And he represents different fun too, because he's Captain Atom, who is quality Superman. Charlton Superman. But let's hold off on that just a little bit. we're a little far afield, just a little bit.
Yeah. I think we kind of set the bar on what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to come up with our terms, and I think we've all got terms we can more or less agree on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so before we get off on that, does anybody have anything to add on the terms? Or are we good? We settled?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so Chuck, tell me what is when you think about a replacement Superman? What are some things that pop out to you?
A replacement Superman. Are you talking about like in terms of like?
Like a knockoff, right? I mean, if you were, as you're looking at people that have taken their universe and built it. Oh, we got to have a place for a Superman.
Okay. I would say like one of the defining features to make a good Superman knockoff has to be the humanity aspect of Superman. Mm-hmm. Because that's one of the big things is for being a Kryptonian, he has pretty much shunned everything from being a Kryptonian, and he's embraced it. He's more human than what we are, in my opinion, and I think that makes for a good Superman.
So, who are some examples of people that would you say from fiction that have nailed that more human than human aspect, other than Superman?
other than Superman, ooh, yeah. I'm trying to think here. Well, you could argue Billy Batson, Captain Marvel. Mm-hmm. For one thing, but once again, that's DC. If you wanted to go Marvel, I would say you would probably go with. You could argue Sentry. Basically, because he started out evil and became good. So he did. Kind of, he was kind of redeemed through his human aspect. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to nail down. Now, if I were going to say, like, in my universe, in the Sporkman universe, I would say, like, our character, or not technically Sporkman universe, but a character I created that has a lot of, like, qualities. Sporkman has a lot of the same qualities. He just doesn't have the superpowers that Superman has. But he has the heart, the humanity, and everything that embodies who's Superman. No, actually, I would actually argue Cartoonicus. No, Superman actually came out before Captain Marvel. 1938 was Superman.
Yeah, Captain Marvel was 40, I think. It was late in the year, but yeah.
But if you would want to go with an equivalent, you could also say Namor the Submariner, because he embraces a lot of the same qualities that Superman has.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that, but the I don't know that Namor has the Paragon aspect of it. He's so antagonistic, especially in those early adventures where he ends up being a hero despite himself.
Correct.
He ends up being a hero because he respects that one lady cop.
Yeah, exactly. But anyhow, that's I would have to argue probably if the best aspect would have to be his humanity. The character has to have that humanity factor in it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a big factor in all of that. Which is one of the reasons, like, I haven't read all of the Sentry stuff, but I really kind of don't like the Sentry as a character. I feel like they missed something with it in their own thing. And largely it's because I think that Marvel, and guys, tell me what you think about this. I think Marvel missed the boat because the native Marvel replacement Superman is actually Thor.
It is.
It is.
Try with Marvel, who is basically exactly just Superman in most ways. Thor is more their Superman than anything.
Right. Well, and especially when he was still Donald Blake, right? And so you had that dual personality of the presumably weak, intelligent, kind doctor, right? Damaged doctor. He's the nobody looks at him because he's just a cripple. And then that also one of the things I love is that is that his walking stick, the cripple's walking stick, hits the ground, boom, it's Mjolnir, right? And so that the symbol of his this is the symbol of his strength, and great.
And he's got that whole
idea.
meek and mild.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and he's got that whole meek and mild part because of the cripple, like Clark does, and like you can fit them 1-to-1 in a lot of different ways, but still also have like an interesting, different background and theme and stuff like that.
Well, and that's one of the things is the minute they shed the Donald Blake identity, when the first time Thor like ascends to Asgard is completely worthy, and they shed all of that. That's like the minute he stops being a very good replacement Superman and just becomes yet another Marvel superhero.
and I think that's kind of Marvel. That's kind of like Marvel not understanding the actual Superman aspect in many ways.
Oh yeah, and they have Marvel has a less like mythic, and I'm in universe to begin with. I mean, it's definitely leans a little more into the sci-fi tropes of its construction. Shabby,
right?
Tell me what do you look for personally? What are you name some characters? Who appeals to you as a replacement Superman?
If I would try to perfectly replace Superman, that's hard thing, right? I think there are definitely really interesting iterations when it comes to knockoff Superman, but they always, if they're interesting, they change the mythos a little bit. They kind of play on it, change stuff, and that becomes the interesting thing. And that like is the building blocks of the story. For example, in Invincible, I do love how they basically made the Kryptonians basically survived, and now they're conquering the galaxy. And playing off of that, that's really cool idea. But it's not good replacement for Superman. And I think the most kind of like perfect guy for me would be, I don't know if you read this book. It's called Huck. It's an indie book, and that's the most Superman-like character, and it's this country bumpkin guy who prefers the simple life. He doesn't like the spot, but he's genuinely the nicest person. He travels across the world to find like a lost kid. He goes for the cat in the tree, and his niceness is like the core aspect when it comes to the book. Just he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He's kind of like that. He wears like jumpsuit, and it's kind of like that, almost like 1950s. I don't want to say simplicity, but wearing heart on your sleeve kind of way of going about. So that's what I would choose. Probably a little lesser known pick, but yeah.
I wasn't aware of that at all. That's Mark Millar, huh?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I may have to check that out. That sounds really interesting. So
yeah, it's fun. It's fun. It has a little bit of a twist. It's kind of like a short series. But yeah, it kind of shows how he's being exploited in a way, because he's kind of like a simple guy, and the media kind of wants a piece of him. The government wants to, hide behind him and kind of, blame stuff on him and just get attention. And in the end, he kind of goes back to the, just helping people out because that's the way you should act. Kind of like. So yeah, for me, it's always the heart, when it comes to Superman. And if I had to do my pick, that's Huck.
Yeah, that's I'm actually. You can read the first issue online. I'm scrolling through it. It is gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think if you have to take that's one thing I think Mark Millar does really good is he takes those Superman those tropes and he really creates good stories.
As long as he's working with his own original stuff.
Yes.
I've been so disillusioned with Millar that I haven't dug deep into his catalog, because the stuff I've read I just hate so passionately.
When he's doing his own, when he's playing with his own toys, it's much easier to accept what he's doing with them. So like I really enjoyed, even though it's basically just superheroes with Ocean's 11, Super Crooks was kind of fun. But like I said, if he had taken that story and had forced it into either Marvel or DC, I probably would have hated it. So it's, I'm glad he got his own. Yeah, I'm glad he got his own line.
That idea of like with what you just said right there, like a superhero heist story, man, that sounds fun.
It was
and
fun.
I think like that's even in another universe, that'd be something that'd be fun to see with like the Rogues or somebody's their own take on a Rogues gallery.
There was like a Sinister Six, I think, that did or something similar.
Yeah.
They've done it a couple times.
Yeah. That's a fun thing. But also the thing is like Millar is a guy like Grant Morrison, right? Where he's got chops, but he seems to like to break his toys, which they're fine if they're his, but
well, look what he did to Jupiter's Legacy. Creates this great comic, and then they go and they make it into live action, and he changes stuff up for the script in the live action. Sorry. It's just like I really was so hyped for that series because I love Jupiter's Legacy, and what they did with that extra TV series was just a travesty.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I do love Cartoonicus is correct. Endgame was a heist movie, but it was a stupid heist movie.
Oh, I hated Endgame. I hated Infinity War too.
Wait, don't want to derail. I just have to get my digs in because I hated that movie so much. Anyway, but thanks, Shabby. I am definitely going to check Huck out. That sounds super fun. So, if I really enjoy the first issue, I might even splash out and spend money on a Millar project, which I'll curse you for, but I might also thank you for.
Another one you could check out is Starlight, which I would highly recommend of his.
From recent memory, King of Spy was amazing.
Well, that's enough Millar talk.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Enough Millar talk. This isn't Millar, man.
So
that was end of Millar minute. Let's go.
That was the end of the Millar minute.
We should have a Millar redemption episode eventually, though.
Okay.
We're gonna have to again. I know it's and I fell for it too, but I believe it's just Mark Miller. I think the Millar thing was just your boy Zach just pronouncing it wrong.
Well,
I've heard it in a few interviews that way, but he doesn't correct it. But I've always thought it was Miller until I heard it in interviews.
I'm pretty sure it's Miller. Yeah.
He probably just doesn't care to correct people. Like,
I think that's the case.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, I know like after I hit 19, I sort of gave up telling people my last name wasn't spelled with a C. So, because this, as you see right here on the board, that's what I use as a pen name. It's the antique spelling of my name, but legally I don't spell it like that. But there's no C either. So, moving on. So, Larry.
So, my pick for this discussion is Supreme, in particular, the Alan Moore era on Supreme, where Alan Moore said, you know what? Maybe I have taken too much piss out of all of the superhero stories for the years. Maybe I should take something and condense down the best aspects of Superman from the 50s and 60s and use Rob Liefeld's edgy Superman character as a venue to tell that. And it was a great read. And that's what I really like when I see a replacement Superman, is I like to see how they take the standard Superman stuff and make it just a little different. That's the stuff I always dug about Invincible. Superman having a kid with powers. Superman's race being, evil, conquering aliens. Those are great things. That's what I like, is how you take those classic elements and you make them your own.
Now, I'm going to have to get back to a little bit. I'm familiar with Supreme in like that it exists, but like I don't know a lot about it. Was that another Image property as well?
It was an Image Liefeld property, though I believe he briefly spun it off into his own entertainment group and then spun it back.
Awesome entertainment.
That was how that worked. Yep.
Yeah. I remember the Wizard article when Awesome spun out to its own thing, and lasted like 6 months or something.
And Supreme was just like, strong, tough, musclehead Superman in the standard Rob Liefeld style of the time. But Alan Moore, had the character go through a retcon, and he traveled to the extra dimensional place where all of the different versions of Supreme go in the retcon. So they're like animal versions from the war.
You already lost me. I hate getting too meta with it. And Moore loves that. It's such his, and I'm not surprised. It's his favorite thing to do. But it's just I just get so tired of it. Even when he's celebrating the medium, he has to basically he can't actually just do the medium straight. It has to be some sort of like commentary on it. It's like, shut the hell up. Just give me a story.
He can't be sincere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now,
yes,
well, and see,
you.
I don't necessarily think that's true, because I think that both the Man Who Has Everything and the Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow are both very sincere stories.
I think it's the closest he gets. I still have some issues with it. But I would agree with you that I think he's trying to be there. Yeah.
Now I do have a runner-up.
I think the man sincerely loves porn. So
now I do have
that might be true.
Now I do have a runner-up that I have a fondness for, called Iron Monroe. If you're not familiar with him,
yes.
So DC had this group of comics talking about Earth 2 and the World War II era heroes, and they're like, "Bro, we're doing Crisis on Infinite Earths. You can't use any of them. So you need to invent Superman, but before Superman was Superman."
Mm-hmm.
So they made the canonical son of Hugo Danner, because Hugo Danner, I believe he was public domain at that point anyway, and they slapped him in there as the Superman analog during the World War II era to kind of make sense of some of those old World War II Superman stories.
Yeah, and he had his Fortress of Solitude was just like his clubhouse he built in the Rocky Mountains, and Monroe was a Colorado kid, and there was I loved Young All Stars, and one of the great things about Iron Monroe, his real name was Arnold, but Iron was his nickname. He only in like 2 issues has anything resembling a superhero costume. It's normally just a t-shirt and jeans, but the great thing about Monroe's character is that he's like a Superboy, right? Where he's got this idealism, because he's like 17. It's the Young All Stars, but he's got this idealism, and he's trying to figure the world out, and he's coming to grips with the fact that he's just different. He's made of different stuff, and one of the things that they take him through is that as they're going through the Young All Stars adventures, they meet these Nazi heroes, and Fifth Columnists, and these guys that are using their powers to hurt people, and Monroe's got to figure out what it means a good man when he's learning what it means to be a man, when it would be really easy for him to be a bad man. And so that's a big conflict within himself. And so that was a really fun little romp that Roy Thomas took on him. So I love the Young All Stars. So yeah, great series. Good pick. I approve. So the medal. I think you're about to cheat.
Was I?
I think I have a feeling when I say, tell me about what you think about the replacement Superman. I feel like you're about to cheat.
What do I feel about him? I don't know. Like, honestly, I don't really like any replacement Superman as much as Superman, because I actually happen to be a fan of Superman. I know a lot of people like to, I guess, kind of shit on him and stuff like that. They're like, oh, Superman's over. I think he's probably one of the best characters ever made. But
agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. But as far as replacement, I think they can be fun. Honestly, there's a lot of fun ones. I tend to prefer more when smaller people tend to make their own, or independent people, as opposed to cramming them in bigger universes like Marvel and stuff like that. which is why eventually I need to get around to reading Omega Girl, since I wasn't around when that was in the Comics Creator Club and stuff. But one of the ones I really liked by an indie person, and I wish it would continue. It kind of stopped after like 6 issues. Was Little Victory by Philip Jackson, is the same guy who makes sequential art, who had like his little replacement Superman character, and she's like a kid, like a teenager who just got assigned to a city for the first time and has to basically just take up the role that the last dead superhero had left. And there's like all kinds of different like eldritch abominations, crime syndicates and stuff, and she's like running around trying to clean it up on the first day. She has no friends. She's like calling home crying. It's like, this is very stressful. It was a pretty fun story, but she still like tries to be a beacon of hope for the city at the same time. And,
what was the name of that comic?
It was called Little Victory, and the arc was called Chimera. You can actually get all 6 issues and the Children of Eris kind of like prequel thing on Indie Planet, print on demand, that he went through. I used to have the copies, I lost them in a move. I'll have to like reorder them again sometime, but I enjoyed it, which is kind of weird. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it so much because aside from his webcomic, pretty much the only other thing he makes is porn. So it's like, oh, you actually made something not pornographic that was pretty good. Thank you.
I'm going to look that up here because that sounds fun.
No,
hey, you know,
not the porn. I'm going to look up
you know,
the comic.
He does a lot of porn. I'm going to look that up.
I was already.
He also has a good webcomic that's not pornographic, but yeah.
But you know, porn artists, hey, they have to be very good at anatomy. So I mean,
do they?
Yeah,
not really. I wouldn't even say he's that good at anatomy. He's good at stylization. He's got like kind of this almost Western anime style. Like it's very cartoon, but you could tell there's like manga influences on it.
Yeah.
The books are all black and white, aside from like obviously the covers are in color. But I really
good
like
at anatomy. Give me a break.
So I actually have a question.
Go for it.
And that's for everyone on the panel. We've kind of gone through the best replacement for Superman. I want to hear what's your pick of like the most fun kind of knockoff. Like who is not like Superman, but he's kind of like a knockoff that did something different, did the twist well enough, and you like that kind of take on it.
Well, I haven't given my.
That's true.
Oh, sorry.
Atlas has not given his yet.
Yeah.
So I love the question, though. I really do. But Atlas, you go first.
That's a good no. It's an excellent question. I mean,
excellent question. It's a great question.
You want to skip me? That's totally fine.
Oh, no, that was rude of me. I'm sorry.
Oh no. Oh, I'm so mad at you. Okay, let me see. I'm going to share my screen in a second. I was trying to find the best examples of this, but they're all gold.
And my buddy Ayrton's in the chat with mentioning the Tick. And I think the Tick kind of qualifies. Kinda.
The Tick is good.
The Tick is great. The Tick is great. Well, and the thing, while you're looking that up, I'll go and riff on the Tick just a little bit. The thing that's great about the Tick is he's got that aspirational where he really believes in a thing, right? And he's got the power set pretty much, right? But what he doesn't have, so is I think that Paragon. That Paragon. Nobody wants to be the Tick. The Tick stands for something, but nobody wants to be the Tick. So I think that's what makes him a really effective. I guess this kind of goes into your question a little bit, Shabby. It will make
I think it's a perfect. Yeah, I think it's a perfect answer to that
because he's got so much of what makes Superman great, but he's not normal at all, and nobody would want to be the Tick. But he does stand for his understanding of the truth, the justice.
It stands for spoon.
Superman.
Ayrton McCartney says, "Yeah, he's Superman but retarded." That's
fair.
That's a fair take.
Okay, let's go.
Charles Benetti is saying, "Hey, good to see you," and we got Neo Star in chat. Good to see you as well. Yeah. I'm going with Stardust, the Super Wizard by Fletcher Hanks.
That there is a deep cut, my friend.
Mostly, I'm going with this because I'm kind of with Metal, which is if I want Superman, I'll go with the OG or I'll go with Supergirl. which
Oh, I love Supergirl.
Supergirl's fun.
If you love Supergirl, you're gonna love Omega Girl.
I was gonna say,
Supergirl's actually my favorite. It's her or John Constantine. Those are my favorite characters that are currently in DC. Yeah,
That's an interesting poker hand right there.
yeah.
Alternatives got theirs, Tomorrow Girl, which is their version of Supergirl.
I think I've seen her, yeah. But if it's not the OGs, then I'm going to go with Stardust, the Golden Age Stardust, the Super Wizard, because what he doesn't have, what Fletcher Hanks doesn't bring to the table in terms of, I don't know, any of the things we expect in comics, he makes up for in sheer audacity, I guess is the word I'll use. So I think we should actually just read a page of this. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more.
That face.
Fletcher's anatomy is all over the map. But who wants to read? I'll read the captions. Who wants to be Stardust and who wants to be the evil criminals?
I will be an evil criminal just because I need a change in my life.
I'll be an evil criminal.
I'm the one.
I think Shabby should read Stardust because he has the build closest to Stardust.
I agree. That's
fair. I think that changes the entire direction of the show. I think that's obviously what we have to do.
All right.
One line.
So,
I can do that.
Pointless the narrator. Then is that the situation?
Yeah. I'll do the captions. Do I need to zoom in more on that?
I can see it from here. If you full screen the thing, it works.
I don't know if I have a full.
No, I mean
if
each of us.
No, if you're StreamYard.
On StreamYard. Okay, yeah, okay.
And then it's totally like
Stardust, the scientific marvel whose vast knowledge of all planets has made him the most remarkable person ever known, is devoting his abilities to crime busting. From his observatory on his private asteroid, he looks at the various planets. His televisional crime detecting unit shows a horrible crime being planned on Earth.
They're going to stop the Earth from revolving.
Our anti-solar ray will check all the motion and thereby destroy the power of Earth's gravity. Oh, it's still me. Do you mean, or is it?
Do you?
Yeah, it's you. Yep.
Yes, you.
Wait, it's. Do you mean
Oh no, it's the green guy. So the first guy was.
I thought it was the green guy.
It is the green guy.
It was the blue guy in the first panel.
No, it's not.
Because okay,
that's just the art not doing its job.
Okay. Do you know what that will mean? As soon as the motion stops, all the people will fly off the Earth's surface into outer space.
What will happen to us?
We don't have a brown guy.
We'll chain
Metal.
ground. But first, we'll charge the Earth with our hydraulic balance ray to keep all the water on the surface, and we'll magnetize all the automobiles and ships so they will stay on Earth.
Wait a second. But then all the women will be in space.
Welcome to Stardust the Super Wizard, where the plans make total sense. And Stardust.
I feel like this is a spiritual ancestor to Xavier Renegade Angel.
Oh my god!
A little.
These are just rich people who are bored. They're not even like genuine supervillains.
I do love how their plan is basically just hinging on everybody being outside on that day.
That's true.
It's
What if they're in their car?
Look, everyone's flying off into space.
They've just flung the entire female population of Earth into space, and there's 3 guys left there. You can't populate the world with 3 guys.
So no, look at this. They fling everyone to space, but they chain themselves to the Earth.
As if it wouldn't just rip them in half.
I gotta say, the space wizard actually looks like he has some extra chromosomes on that panel.
Yeah.
Well, like they magnetize every vehicle. What if you were on a train when they did this? You would still be inside the train.
Yep.
Anyway, so Stardust Stardust encircles the Earth. He always has a beam or a ray for every situation. He gets everyone back on the planet. And then our villain is very, very, scared because Stardust has thwarted his plan. Now here's Stardust. We can see again that master of anatomy, Fletcher Hanks, bringing to the table. And this is what happens. This is what happens to the villain. Okay, so he flings him into space. Just, basically dose of his own medicine, but that's not good enough. After he flings him into space, he then freezes him. Just freezes him in a block of ice. So this Stardust would always do this. He would basically take the villain and then give them a dose of their own medicine. Sometimes they would live, sometimes they would not. And then the other thing that Stardust is, of course, known for, let me find another example of it, is whenever he's flying. Whenever he was flying, he would often show him in this from behind pose like this. So the flying poses were always very awkward and stilted, but there's something magical about reading these stories because of just how insane they are, and how insane the villains are, and then how insane Stardust is, and how he gives them their comeuppance and either rips them to pieces or freezes them in a block of ice or throws them into space or all three.
It's pieces, then put them back together again so that they can learn from their crimes.
No, he's like I said, it's sometimes it's the poetic justice. There was one hilarious panel I was trying to find where I think they had super apes, and Stardust tosses the bad guys to the super apes, and the apes tear the bad guys to pieces. You can see their limbs being thrown across into the air.
My goodness. So this is how we got the comics code, huh?
No, it wasn't even that violent, but it was just funny to see the limbs being tossed around. I'll see if I can find it in a minute.
I will say that this is my favorite type of supervillains. I like it when you just have evil people doing things that don't make sense because they're evil. It's I just want to do something evil.
See, I don't dislike that for what it is. I just wish they hadn't drawn the main villain to look like me. That's the part I don't like. I mean, granted, I didn't exist for another 40 years, but this still hurts me a little.
Maybe he time traveled.
The collection that you can purchase of this is a quote from one of the villains who says, "I will destroy all the civilized planets."
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
I didn't realize what it was.
That's Fletcher Hanks. Now, the other fascinating part about this is that it's not just the character that's insane; it's the creator's biography. There's this sort of I would almost call there's this. It's fascinating to read about him. He was a very interesting fellow, but he was also kind of I don't know if I'd call it tragic figure, because although he wrote about these very they're almost like fairy tales. They're super fairy tales, but as a man and a father himself, everything that we know about the man was that he was kind of a bastard, because apparently he was an abusive father, and he died penniless, frozen in the cold. I think after maybe abandoning his family. So but there's so much interesting material in his story, is almost as fascinating as the stories that we read from him.
I feel like
he was going to be a Hemingway and was more interesting than any of his stories.
Yeah. You know what? I feel like this would be great for the coming mark treatment, where you replace all the words in the text with on top of the art here, because I think you could just do so many different just bizarre stories working around this art.
Yeah, he's fascinating, and he's also the inventor of Phantoma. If anyone's people are probably more familiar with Phantoma. Yeah, but Fletcher Hanks made.
That's some crazy stuff, dude.
He left an impact on the industry, but Stardust the Super Wizard, because of his sheer, like I said, audacity more than anything else, I was I think he's going to be my go-to for Superman, who is definitely not Superman.
Yeah. Man,
this is a strong choice. So,
now if I have to pick a Superman who's not Superman, I have a hard time not cheating myself, because we created a character called the Immigrant, and I want to write more immigrant stories. But we also, instead of giving him laser vision, we gave him lightning vision. So that's not. I was gonna bring a picture up, but would be boring to wait for me to look it up. So I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna say it there and go buy Zing 1 from my Gumroad shop.
And Zing 2, obviously.
He's in Zing 2 too. Yes, that's right. So okay, there you go. That's it. That's the story. Yeah, when I said you were gonna, I thought you would cheat metal. I thought just because you were gonna bring Tales of Honor out to talk about that.
Hymn of Valor.
Valor, yeah, that's the one. Sorry, got the name wrong. I remembered wrong.
No, people should read that though. Right, I'm just saying.
Tales of Valor.
It's wedged in. It's an intermission of X Dynamis Chaos, but you literally don't even have to read the rest of X Dynamis Chaos to get what's going on.
So, Reese, a character who is not your own character. Are we going with Billy Batson?
No, I do love Billy Batson. I love the concept of the idea. Well, there's a couple things I love about Billy Batson, Captain Marvel, right? One is I think that when they wrote into their groove, they did a really good job of dealing with these concepts of adult responsibilities versus child responsibilities, and how to kind of bring the audience to this idea that maturity is something you go through, and that it's I think that's a cool theme. But I also love the bent appeal that for a good chunk of the late 40s, Captain Marvel was for being a Superman knockoff, an intentional Superman knockoff. I mean, it's different enough where it wasn't really but I mean, they were trying to hit those Superman notes, right? And very intentionally trying to hit those Superman notes of the normal guy who's also the best of the best of us, who's also super powered, all that kind of stuff, right? He's got that iconic look to him, looked like Fred McMurray. So to do that, he was also the more popular than Superman for a good chunk of the late 40s. In fact, that's why DC took Fawcett to court like 5 times and lost 4 times. and finally they did win, and it was such a hassle to Fawcett Publications that they shuttered their entire comic books wing and went on to invent the paperback novel. So so that's such an interesting piece of comic book history that it would be hard to not point to that one. I'm also I think it's really fascinating too how many people have gone with the evil Superman route. You know, like in our quote there, the Marvel's got it's got Sentry kind of sort of evil on sometimes, right? It's got Hyperion, their Hyperion from their fake Justice League, Squadron Supreme.
Squadron Supreme, yep.
Yeah. They've got there's the super, I can't remember, for the Kree. There's
oh, you mean the Shire?
Gladiator, yeah.
Gladiator.
Right? Who's like Gladiator, who's like the Superman of his people, right? That doesn't really get in the main thing, but or even like Brightburn, and even taking a look at Superman in that DC series that's based on the video game that I can't remember the name of.
Injustice God.
Thank you. Why so many people are drawn to do the evil Superman story, or Homelander, right? Who's just purely selfish, that. What do you think it is that makes it so tempting to say, "Oh, I'm going to take the Superman archetype and just make him evil"?
I think for me, I do want to piggyback on like a Superman character that I like. That's not really that has the archetypes. After I do answer this, I think it's because the fact of people hate that Superman is who he is. He's too idealized in a lot of people's opinion. He rides, like I remember I said about the humanity. He's more than just human. You know what I mean? He's gone beyond what the thing. And I think the fact of, with DC adding a lot of the Christ-like figure aspects to him and stuff like that, he is almost like a god. You know what I mean? And I think people don't like that. And that's why they throw back at it on him. They would rather see him being evil because it's more reflective of who we are.
Right. Well, and I think one thing in the post-crisis that they really did to emphasize Clark's humanity was building some stability into the Lois and Clark relationship, right? And having them, progress through this relationship and having them become more vulnerable with each other. And Clark explains his super identity, and there's a difficult acceptance that she goes through because she's been lied to, but understands the reason for it. And they, they get married and, move it along. They have kids and all that kind of stuff. In that post-crisis Superman journey, I think they do a lot to explain and double down with Clark's humanity. There's some hiccups. There was the blue Superman, the electric Superman thing. No, let's not pretend it was flawless, right?
Red and blue. Yep.
But yeah, it seems like they did a really good job of that, and yet people still say, "Oh, I'm going to make him evil," or I'm going to take the concept and play that. And I'm not going to. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's especially in a situation where there doesn't seem to be a counterpoint, right? Like we're talking about Lex Luthor kind of fitting into the anti-Superman category because, like Ozymandias, he believes, especially post-crisis Superman, Lex Luthor, right? He believes he's doing what he's doing for the betterment of humanity. After he made his millions, he's he made his millions of your skullduggery. But now that he's rich, he's going to give back. Right? But in DC that gives a counterpoint to it. But you look at Squadron Supreme and their Earth, right? There's no counterpoint to the evil Superman. It's just evil Superman, right?
No. In Squadron Supreme, there was an evil Superman who was a clone from our universe who went to their universe. So the evil Superman didn't come into their universe, but after an evil alien took over all the leaders of the world, their version of the Justice League had to take over the world for the betterment of humanity, and then it went wrong.
So
as it always does.
As it always does. Wait, Larry, sorry everybody. I just noticed your icon is a Gonzo Steve.
Yes, it is. That's what I chose for this adventure.
Huh. Okay. Oh, this is a great comment from the chat, guys. Sorry to interrupt. Fizchoco says evil Superman is redundant with Darkseid.
I would agree.
Yeah, and the reason everybody's
Darkseid's redundant in itself, but I can't argue with your point, man.
The reason everybody's so hopped up on evil Superman is a lot of people got really into the postmodern critique on heroism in literature and fiction, and instead of doing something deep and meaningful and insightful with that idea, they said, let's just take something good and make it evil. And not do any of the underlying work necessary to make it interesting.
Well, I think there's also just a general human impulse. It's kind of like when you look at Gnostic cults and stuff like that. It's like, hey, let's take the thing you already know, but hey, did you know it was actually not as good as you thought it was? Let me show you. Let me show you what I really know about the thing you think you know, right? Like I think there's just this impulse in there. To kind of like twist knowledge and stuff like that. But I was also going to say my favorite evil Superman is from Superman 3, which is also still Superman.
So you're talking about the Superman that got attacked by nicotine kryptonite?
Yep. I was going to go with my favorite non-super. The version of Superman would actually be from Jupiter's Legacy, the Utopian, the main character. Sheldon Sampson, the Utopian.
Okay.
So it has a lot of the similarities, but I think the biggest thing is he couldn't be wrong. Like Superman, he can always admit when he's wrong about something. The Utopian could never admit that he was wrong about something. It always had to be right. So there was that aspect there of him not being humble. Whereas, that's the one of the human aspects I love about Clark. He's willing to admit when he's wrong, and he's willing to swallow that pride and do what needs to be done, the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think that's fun. I think that's the idea that part of human experience. That part of the human experience is growth, and
right.
even though Clark is all powerful, that doesn't necessarily make him all wise, which is a good framework looking at that things that were changed in the Crisis, or before Crisis, in a lot of ways, especially deep in the 60s, where there was just either no moral question, or it was simply that Superman was never made mistakes. So, well, of course, those are a little bit different times, though. Yeah. I actually, an interesting thing from the chat I want to point out. One, Cartoonica says the rule 52 of the internet: the more beautiful and pure something is, the more satisfying it is to destroy it. I do think that's part of it, and also because, I think that's part of it. Also, another thing I want to point out: Fizz says Superman was never meant to be a Christ-like figure that came from the 70s movie. Moses and Jesus are two fundamentally different archetypes. And I think definitely there is an argument to be made there, but the thing they have in common is the concept of deliverance.
Yep.
And so there is definitely a commonality, even though they are separate. Moses' deliverance is different from Jesus' deliverance in a mythological setting. But there is,
Moses was the precursor, basically.
Mm-hmm. Right. Moses points the way to deliverance, whereas Jesus is himself the deliverance.
Yep.
So that's a different kind of a thing. But we don't need to get into Deuteronomy tonight.
But what's interesting is, one thing I will say, though, a lot of times a lot of these other characters, they try to use the religious aspect quite a lot in these other characters too. Mm-hmm. Because he is so rooted within the Jewish faith. I mean, Superman he comes out of the idealized of what the Jewish people were suffering at that time during World War II, and what was going on over Germany and stuff like that. And Superman was meant to be that deliverer, that modern deliverer. Because.
And I think that definitely grew into things, but it also comes from a place of that immigrant story.
Yeah.
That comes to that, and the idea of the American promise is the idea that despite the hardship you come from, that success and justice are capable and possible. They just have to find somebody willing to stand up and act that out. And I think that's definitely falls within that's the Superman story, which that's really one of the foundational aspects of the American superhero writ large, is the idea that kind of thing is possible, and that we can rise to that whole idea. So which is that's one of the things I'm really intrigued about that Huck that Shabby was talking about, because I want to with what Miller has done, or however the hell you say his name. I feel like I need to find an interview or something where the guy just introduces himself. He comes out and says, "Hey,
introduces himself."
Yeah, because then he's going to say it like he says it, right? Anyway,
one would hope.
One of the things he really missed in Civil War and in some of these other stuff he was involved in, where he misses the core of the American superhero story. But from looking at what I looked at of that first issue, it seems like maybe he's actually grasping it in his story, but he was missing it in that other story. That's the whole thing. But we'll talk more about that next week. So, that's a little a little teaser for next week's show. We're talking about the law next week. Oh
yeah, that's a good topic too. By the way, I've always wanted to talk the Superhero Registry Act.
So here's something.
Back to Superman.
We should put some time in for the ladies, because Wonder Woman was created to be a Superman knockoff to a certain extent.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And we have, of course, Twitless, who made a female Superman type archetype thing. So, well, we should talk about how they do it differently for the ladies.
Well, and that's a question, right? So a female hero and a male hero, not necessarily Wonder Woman so much, because Wonder Woman's
a crap ton of feminism to it.
Well,
not me. I don't. But Marston did.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm
Marston was all over that, like white on rice.
Yeah. There was Wonder Woman is kind of messy because of like Marston's whole like perception of stuff, right?
You mean all his fetishes?
Yeah. Okay.
Marston's writing is literally the author's barely disguised fetish.
Oh, they weren't disguised.
Yeah, no, they were straight. His sexual predilections were right there on display. 100%.
They were just censored that you could sell to kids. That's the most.
Yep.
Right. Well, and like you guys have all seen the Police Squad still that gets sent around as a meme, right? The artist barely disguised fetish. Yeah, that's all that. But I mean, part of it is the nature of dynamics, and so Marston sometimes and not always kind of wrote Wonder Woman as a dude, but not really, because that's his whole like gender role thing, right? So Wonder Woman not so much, but in terms of literature writ large, like there is a difference between the functions of the male hero and the functions of the female hero, and sometimes that's reflected in superhero stories, but not always. And probably because mostly dudes write them. And sometimes when girls write them, they're still writing them that way because of feminism. But we don't have to get into all of that. But what do you guys think about my premise there? I mean, how much do you think that the differences in gender roles would affect a superhero type character who is a Superman knockoff?
Well, you just have to look at Supergirl right directly. I mean, Supergirl's a prime example. She's everything that Clark is, but she has one advantage of him. The advantage of her is while she's everything Clark was, she's just wrapped in a teenage shell, and she has a better, say, her body. I mean, because her power set is a little bit stronger than Clark's because. She is younger, so she's at the prime coming at her prime.
She absorbs sunlight faster than he does.
Right, yeah. So you look at her, and really, she is a one step above him. What if Clark wasn't raised here on Earth? What would he be like as a teenager? She's that perfect example. What's that?
It's the midriff shirt.
Yeah, so like I think she is, and you once again you got to look at what iteration of Supergirl because there's been so many different ones of her. But if I had to take if you look at Power Girl versus Supergirl because they are technically the same person, you see Supergirl from the modern Supergirl. She is very headstrong. She's very kind of like just like off the she has no self-control, whereas I think Kara El from Earth 2, she has that maturity and she's evolved that through everything, and she has that more stableness like Clark does. All the advantages of what Kara has, you know what I mean, but maturity aspect. So that's what I would say. That's a good example. I just Supergirl right directly herself. But in terms of like if we put non-Supergirl, Rogue would be like another good choice because I think Rogue really exhibits a lot of the same aspects of Superman because she has the strength, the superpower, she can fly. One advantage, she absorbs everybody's superpowers.
She does also have the longing for a normal life.
Yes,
and I think that's actually a really strong story aspect that doesn't get hit on in a lot of the stuff I've read. Where it's kind of like, hey, we're going to give this little nod over here to the fact she longs for normal life, and then not mention it again for like 7 months. I don't know.
That's just my opinion.
It's just one of those things. I think it maybe gets missed in terms of the thing. So yeah. So what other knockoff Supergirls, come to play in that? I don't know that it would be harder in maybe some ways to pin down. I guess the retro girl from Bendis Powers would be classed into that, but I don't know if she ever shows up again. I've only read the first volume.
Say Marvel has quite a few of them. You've got all the Captain / Ms. Marvels. You've got Rogue, who's technically just a Ms. Marvel knockoff.
Oh God, I'm so resentful of that too.
She stole the powers from
benched Carol when she was like at her best.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like they took she's essentially, because Carol Danvers was essentially Superman, in the Marvel universe, and then Rogue. Go ahead.
She was essentially
if I may, I think that's the problem. They're essentially Superman. So if you would twist it, what would a female raised in Kansas be like, right? I actually kind of like the idea of more of a motherly role and superhero being, right? So instead of kind of like the leader, protector, moral goodness, she's kind of like more nurturing, kind of like more kind, kind of like, oh, let's. I'm imagining an apron as an outfit for some reason.
Well, I was going to take a different. I actually have a story in the backlog I want to do that I was going to do in like comic strip form, and I was going to call it John Boy and Tom Girl, and it was going to be a pair of siblings who had superpowers that lived out on a farm, and that's kind of where I was going to go with that, because she was going to be with the super strength of the two of them.
Yeah, but I mean, don't tell me that it's like almost criminally underused. Every time you see a female superhero, she's like the girl boss, right? And definitely have those characters, but you don't see the like really feminine aspects kind of shining through.
Common America is one that comes to mind, which is like, I'm super girl, but I want to knit clothes. I want to make clothes.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's definitely an aspect that they're shooting for on it. But I mean, it's also like the perspective of protection is because of the nature of that is a little bit different in the way that shakes out than a Superman character would be. It's maybe a little less proactive, a little more reactive, and the idea of a lot of superheroes, especially this has been something that I don't remember this being a thing when I was growing up, and maybe it's because I just wasn't paying attention, but recently more it seems that superhero battles being so like
truncated,
not just truncated is a factor, but they're also like collateral damage doesn't really seem to play in, right? Like a consideration of reducing collateral damage, right? You have a lot of people getting punched through buildings and all that kind of stuff in such a way. And I mean, of course, like that's a huge trope in like manga and like, One Punch Man, where you have entire cities being leveled in these fights.
Terrible tornado. Watch what she does.
And that's and like that's all part of that. That's an aspect of that subgenre of stuff, and that goes all the way back.
It's part of the spectacle.
It's part of the spectacle, and I mean, Akira is the whole thing. Like the destruction, as far as is a plot point in Akira, and it's a setting piece in One Punch Man, and I mean it factors into the thing. But I mean, it would seem that but when I remember when I was a kid, is that like reading in thought balloons and reading in that kind of stuff, that the heroes were more thinking about the collateral damage, unless it was like a doomsday level event. Like when Death of Superman, when they're tearing through whole cities, like there was an impact in that, because I remember reading these guys in Justice League and in Superman, and where they were intentionally avoiding populated areas for these big Michael Bay fights. Right?
Yep.
But it would seem that even if we're going to take this massive level of destruction as the norm, well, then your Supergirl characters would be just like, no, we can't have this fight here. Think of the children. But I don't know. Maybe that's looking too much into the momness.
Well, just to give you an example, I don't know if you guys watched the latest.
My choice.
I don't know if you guys saw the latest Justice League or the Legion of Superhero movie with Supergirl that they set in the takes place right after Superman, the Man of Tomorrow. So they actually have it like where she's fighting against Solomon Grundy, beating the crap out of Solomon Grundy, and the city's getting torn up. She looks around, and all of a sudden, like, it kicks in. It's like, oh shit, everybody's watching me, what I'm doing. And she always becomes self-conscious of she's creating all this additional damage and stuff like that without a care in the world. And it's like, uh-oh, now I'm subconscious about that issue. Do you know what I mean? I think that would probably be more realistic, that, especially like with a young girl like Supergirl, she wouldn't care about, like, protecting somebody in some ways. Now, if she was older, like Carol or Rogue or something like that, I could definitely see that aspect of them caring about the little children. Like, Wonder Woman has taken fights to other areas against the Cheetah because, she's trying to minimize as much damage as possible.
And Wonder Woman's an interesting aspect in that, too, because it totally depends on who's writing it, right? Like, when Perez was writing the Wonder Woman reboot back in the 80s, right? I mean, like, her whole character and that nurturing aspect of womanhood was part of the stories, right?
Yep.
But then in the New 52, I mean,
Greg Ruckia,
she was just another warrior who was hacking people apart, right? There wasn't, I mean, except like, oh, but she's a warrior in love this time.
They really wanted to lean into the Amazon aspect with that one.
Right. Which, and they had, their whole, their take on the mythology and the idea of seed males and all that kind of stuff, they played with, but it seemed to make it, to me, it's felt a little less like a Wonder Woman story and more like, I don't know.
So it depends on how you define Wonder Woman, because again, when you go to Marston's version of it was this weird kinky bondage thing, but it wasn't just the kinky bondage thing. The bondage thing was his own, it was his philosophy.
Right.
The whole idea was that he wanted to teach men to be bound and to basically bind all of their patriarchy up, and that to be dominated by female power. And only when male power had been bound together, tied up, and then sublimated to female domination through love. It was all through love, by the way.
Yeah.
But it was basically that lasso was love, and it needed to tie up men. That was going to be how we got world peace.
Right. Well, and
so
what I meant more
whole,
is
like, weird blend of philosophy, pacifism, and sexual it's kink.
Yeah. Specifically what I was referring to was in terms of my experience having, started reading Wonder Woman comics, at the time I was, and then this drastic shift to the new mythology. Mm-hmm. So it didn't feel like it fit in with Wonder Woman as I'd read in her own book, and that kind of stuff. So that's really what I'm talking about. It felt discordant to me, but so did the whole Wonder Woman Superman relationship thing. I didn't like it in Kingdom Come. I didn't like it in the New 52. I just
no. It's like those things. Superman has to be with Lois. Spider-Man has to be with Mary Jane. Yeah. It's one of those gospel things.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah, not anymore. Well, now he claims she's like a sister to him.
Yeah, we don't need to get into the whole Mary Jane conversation.
No, but it's kind of like those staple things.
You can go back. We had it on. Check the replay out. We had that whole conversation.
Yeah, we hashed that one out.
Well, actually, so I do think this slightly plays into the difference between the like the male and the female Superman, using some older Supergirl stories. So the guy is usually trying to pass the woman's filter. So you see like Superman, who's got like one love interest that he's trying to get the whole time, but he can't actually do everything he could do to get the love interest because he can't like let the fact that he's Superman really slip for the longest time. So his disguise has to try to live up and win over the love interest. Supergirl, on the other hand, being the woman, is the one with the filter, and a lot of her older stories, you realize she has a hard time finding a date.
Yep.
Right, because she's doing all this Supergirl stuff, but she also can't find a guy that will put up with her disappearing and stuff. But she doesn't necessarily have like one love interest. She's just trying to find a guy at all. And you see like these drastic differences.
For her as like a 15, 16-year-old too, because permanency is a few years out for that role concept. Yeah.
And don't forget one of her noble boyfriends did turn into a horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna put a damper on your ability to go out on a date.
Yeah, but you guys can be best friends then.
Well, I want to interject. We got a few more people in chat. Well Red says down with Superman. Thanks, buddy.
I'm also
trolling
down with
our
Superman.
topic. Gosh. Fizz says female superheroes can't really have their own individual personalities. Ayrton says seed males equals death by snoo snoo. And Neo Star says most Dragon Ball Z fights are often moved into wastelands and mountain ranges. Perkunicus says horse zoned. This is better than
that could go into too many wrong directions.
Yeah,
we don't have to talk about that.
We like to say escort zoned. By the way,
don't even.
We want to be polite.
I'm not sure if that's more polite, Twitless.
I get it.
Anyway. So, but yeah, I mean, if we're looking at the concept of the Superman needing to be somebody who, the Superman, the knockoff Superman, I should say, needing to be somebody that fits that idea of a desire for normalcy, then I think that Supergirl needing to looking for a date for Friday, not being able to find a date for Friday, getting the cold shoulder from her friends, that kind of role reversal and all that kind of stuff, I think is actually a fun one in that. And especially because part of the reason Supergirl exists, right, was to try to leech off of that romance comic market.
Yeah.
And that was so big at the time. And that's actually a really fun thing that we'll eventually talk about one of these days, is the history of romance comics. And how but that's kind of fun to think about how that plays in to the whole thing. Oh, hey, Neo is correct, pointing out nobody has mentioned Bizarro.
Yeah.
Even when we were talking about the evil Superman.
Yeah, an actual
Superman
right
clone. That part of the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were trying to like broaden ourselves out of, know.
Just
but he is a decent example. Like you said, like as Cartoonicus said, there's a lot of Superman clones directly of Superman as characters in DC Comics, and we could do a whole show on them.
Yeah, I mean, and like even in the in Image there was Supreme.
You got Omni-Man, you have Supreme, you have the one from Wildcats whose name is escaping me, Majestic.
Yeah, and there was Majestic, who came over with through Wildstorm, and there was a storyline in the late 90s or the early aughts that swapped Captain Atom and Majestic, and Captain Atom went into the
Icon
universe. And Icon.
Icon.
Yeah, that got mentioned in the chat earlier, and we didn't get to it, but I loved Icon. Man,
Clarence Thomas's favorite superhero.
What?
Clarence Thomas's favorite superhero.
It is Clarence Thomas,
which made Dwayne McDuffie kind of chuckle.
Yeah. But no, I thought Icon is a really a neat concept, really a fun way of taking a look at that character, of that archetype, and playing with it. The only thing I just really regret that I at the time I didn't choose to spend my money on it because I was busy collecting Flash, and I only had so much scratch to go with. Flash and Robin, and that's what I was spending my money at the time.
Who was the Superman knockoff that was in Savage Dragon?
Oh, I don't
had one there too.
Savage Dragon to know.
Yeah, they had one of those in Savage Dragon whose name.
Well, I mean, that's the thing with Image, given the fact that they were all disconnected stories and all of them came from, more traditional Cape Comics. They were all bound to have their own knockoff Superman.
Yeah.
I found the image I'm looking for. It's actually from Phantoma and not Stardust, but it is hilarious. And it's Phantoma doing, again, another Fletcher Hanks thing, which is I'm a bad guy. I've got an evil army of like mutant gorillas. And Phantoma dumps him on the evil gorillas, and there's the limbs getting tossed.
It's so beautiful and bloodless. It's amazing.
And your serum too shall be destroyed. Yeah, Fletcher Hanks is something special. How about the time he shrunk a guy into just a head and then threw that into space? Anyone remember that?
No.
Here, I got this pulled. You got to see this. Okay.
Well, it's perfect.
So maybe we
because
should
can
just
watch
do
it
a night on Fletcher Hanks. This was Dr. Destructo, and Stardust uses his transforming ray and shrinks this guy into just a giant head. You see, and then, but then that can't be it, right? So he then takes the guy who he's shrunken into a head, carries him into space, throws him into this body that doesn't have a head. You know, you just kind of have to read the story, and then the head gets absorbed into this giant torso. So I don't know what Fletcher Hanks was on, but whatever it was, I want some.
And once again, he's using my face as a villain.
Wait, Stardust, please have mercy on me.
I mean, you have such a classical face there.
What?
That's why your
villain
face
face?
keeps used.
Hey, as one of the big nosed, I'm starting to take offense at this.
Oh,
All right.
Because I notice his heroes all have the smallest noses. I feel.
I mean, clearly, like, clearly going with the physiognomy.
The slopey forehead and the big nose, and I feel hurt.
Cartoonicus is asking a question I definitely have to answer, which is, so how about Omega Girl being a college student? What was that question in reference to, buddy? Because I would love to answer it, but
I think it was in reference to talking about Supergirl as a teenager and getting dates and stuff like that. And Omega Girl's a college student, which is like, that generational peak afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But she's still young lady, and that's Omega Girl is my favorite. Inspired by Superman character, but for the purposes of this show, like I said, got to go with my boy Stardust.
Well, you got to be your biggest fan. If you're not going to be your biggest fan, who will be?
Exactly.
Well, and the one thing about that I do like, that I think in relation to the concept of Omega Girl and dating, because like she's a student, but she's also in a situation where like that concept of permanence is still a little outside of her personality, her personal journey. She's, as far as I've read in the stuff, doesn't look like she's looking to settle down right out of college. She's not attending for her MRS degree.
Not quite, so. But I do. There is a love interest, and we are building on that.
So something else that I think we should probably touch on is, what about the time that Stan Lee wrote Superman?
No, just
Stan Lee. I never read any of the Stan Lee creates the Marvel Universe. Or the DC Universe stuff. I didn't read any of it, so I can't.
Same here.
Yeah. Am I the only one who read that comic?
Maybe.
I read it. I've read like several of Stan Lee's. Imagine.
Imagine.
Yep. And it's so funny because I read them, and then my brain dumps them. And so I cannot tell you about anything that's in them because I've read them and then my brain just dumps them. And so it's clearly they were Stan Lee's best work because my brain refuses to hold on to what happens in those comics.
So the Superman one he did is Superman was a space cop going after a space crook. They both crashed on Earth. And he, of course, developed powers because of Earth's different gravity and this and that and the other thing. And he became an entertainer so that he could get enough popular opinion to go after the evil criminal do-gooder from his planet. Classic Stan Lee thinking in a story.
I think it just goes to show he was definitely where he needed to be.
Yeah, I would agree.
The Marvel method did not necessarily match the DC.
Yeah. Well, and yeah. Also, the intersection of all of the things in that little thing was that little moment in time we just had. The intersection of the chat and Larry's story and the content of the dealio. All of that was just perfect. Thank you, chat. You've saved the show. So, Yeah, I've never read that, but I did read Dan Jurgens' similar thing, the Tangent universe.
Yes.
Yeah, and
where they had Adam
Superman.
was the Superman.
Yeah, kind of. The Superman was became like the for some reason something happened. I can't remember the cause for it, but he basically became like hyper evolved, and all of his powers were psychic, and so he starts not being able to relate to people around him because he's like this big brain kind of thing, and a little bit like the story arc that Dr. Manhattan goes through, but without the same other framework on it. So it was very different.
Well, let me interject. So it's getting late for Shabby because he's on the other side of the planet. So I want to give him. We should give him the floor. So
Absolutely, absolutely.
We haven't heard from him in a little bit, so you have the floor, sir. Again, sorry if we were.
No.
Hey, real quick, guys, I just want to say I'm going to bow out. I actually got to get to bed for work tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chuck.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
So Shabby, you're doing something with your life these days, right?
Yeah. I drew a book, and it's really good. And it's over 150 pages at this point, and it's finished. And you should all check it out. It's called Vestry, and we have issues 1 through 5 currently on Kickstarter. So if you haven't read it, haven't heard of it, it's a fantasy series, and you can get the whole story in one Kickstarter campaign right now. It's live. We have I think 8 days left on there. So yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah, I would say Damon's my favorite replacement Conan.
He is an excellent replacement Conan. That's a fact.
Conan's a good character.
That's actually a great compliment. So.
Yeah. Conan's an OG. Yeah.
If you want a little bit of a hint what's going on, in our latest issue, our hero got mortally wounded, and now he is in a race against time to get back his magical MacGuffin that will not only save his life, but save actual universe of Vestry.
Yeah,
hopefully he can make it on time.
Sweet. One of the things I love about the Vestry stories, they do a really good job of balancing like this great fantasy, a barbarian story with this political intrigue that works its way naturally into the thing. And so I think they do a really good job of giving you just enough to kind of put all the pieces together without having to go back and read the D&D manual of Vestry. Huge content. I mean, they plug you into the universe pretty well.
And he gives us maps. I love maps.
Oh, I love maps. I also love maps. So, Shabby, do you draw the maps, or how does that shake out?
Yeah, I do.
Nice.
That's pretty. It's pretty tenacious job. Yeah, but I actually like maps too. So it was a fun project for me to do.
Hey, we've been joined by a sixth party.
Okay.
I'd have to say, Shabby's art has come quite a long way since he started working on this stuff. I remember back in the Cult of Raven Twitter chats with him, like figuring out how he was going to do like his rendering and hash lines and stuff, and it is tremendous progress to have watched. I'm glad the way things have come out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I think that's kind of a really fun thing about when you go and now buy like all the issues. You can kind of see in one story the art evolution that was like over 4 years of drawing by now. Yeah, so pretty insane. We actually were able to stack this out for so long.
Yeah, and of course it's written by our very own English Nachos over on Twitter. And that's and it's just, man, you guys working together has just been a really fun thing to see how it's built. I really enjoy Vestry, so
It's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that. I don't genuinely get too much feedback on it, so whenever I can like hear someone who actually read it, I'm like, yes, tell me more. But yeah. It's been
No, I mean,
really
we
fun
always
working.
gush over on the Vomitorium, but I guess Pickles hasn't transferred any of that information over to you.
No, I never heard. Okay, so that's me hearing it for the first time.
So every time you had a campaign, because of time, like you're a little bit after him, we can only get him on to
Oh, that's
promote it and
bullshit.
stuff like that.
What?
I've asked a few times. He's like, no, Chubby, it'll be too late for him, so he comes on instead.
Oh, fuck off!
Because we're a little earlier, so it'd probably even be even easier than getting on a show like this.
See, and
Yeah.
I'll do it, dude.
the funny thing is, like, I can barely ever get him on this show because he's like, "Oh, that's too late for me." And he used to be
dude, it's 5 a.m. over here. I'll do it.
Yeah, we're like an hour and a half earlier as well.
And before you guys hooked up and started working together, like he was watching the show back in the chat, like way back in the day, and he'd be just like, "It's 3 a.m. I don't know what I'm awake for."
Yeah,
because back then he was actually in uni, so he had time because he was a student. Now he actually has a job. So
yeah. But he'll do metal show.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and he'll come on. Well, we're Cult of Raven buddies. He has to come on, right? And he'll talk about it for like 20 minutes, and then we'll just like talk about food for the rest of the time because it's just what he wants to talk about instead.
Yeah, he does talk about food a lot. I think he's just hungry, So you should definitely buy
all of
Vesper
his
so he can afford some food. Yeah. I need to feed my writer. God damn it! Help me share the book around.
That's hilarious. Yeah. So, well, since we have been joined by Cartoonicus, and since this
came up with this idea,
really his idea. Tell me, what is your take on the replacement Superman?
But before that, I'm probably gonna bounce you guys.
Okay, man. We'll appreciate
it.
Hey,
man, take it easy,
guys. Everybody, I put the link to
the
Kickstarter in the chat, and after the show, I'm going to drop it in the description as well. So go back, Vestry, if you haven't. You just listen, guys. There's a few projects in the world where if you're not reading them, you don't like yourself. Vestry is one of those. So go read Vestry. Oh, Omega Girl is one too. I have to admit. But for the sake
Vestry's done. You can catch up on all of it.
There you go. That's the pitch.
Yeah, done. Yeah, so thank you everyone for having me on. Really had fun. And thank you for all the kind words about Vestry. Metal, you can hit me up in the DMs, if you want.
If it'll even let me send one. For some reason, you don't follow me anymore. I don't know why.
I have open DMs.
Okay.
You should be able to listen. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for having me, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Later. Okay. Now that he's gone, let's go back to talking about Superman. So yes, Cartoonicus. Tell us about your why did you pick this topic? Why did you think it was so awesome and then not fight for your spot on the panel?
I didn't think I did. I thought I added my comment after you suggested it.
I'm pretty sure this was your idea.
I actually suggested the idea. And then
okay, see, that's right. That's what it was. Anyway, when I
don't even know what's going on anymore.
Oops.
No, he's right. He was the one who originally suggested that, and then when I was pointing out my my comment about DC and all their different versions of Superman, I was thinking at that time that you were talking about specifically the replacement Superman men that actually happened in DC Comics after the death of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically the four. What was it? Superboy, Robot Superman, Steel, and then that weird version of
Cyborg,
Superman
Eradicator.
Right.
Oh yes, the Eradicator. Yeah.
I mean, the Eradicator's a robot, and Cyborg was technically a robot too.
Yeah, that's true. The Eradicator is more than a robot. It does.
Can we not do this tonight?
I don't want to have that conversation.
I want to
Can
just
we
go on
not do-
record and say I hate Reign of the Supermen.
Can we
Just
not do Reign of
straight
the
up out there.
I mean, the only positive thing is it gave it. The only positive thing it gave us is it gave us Superman with a mullet.
But so yeah, that's what I was thinking at the time of the idea of literal replacements in the DC universe for Superman himself. Which to me, I was thinking like that is the one Superman related topic that I'd actually be up for. And then when I found out that was not the case, I was like, oh, a little disappointed, but okay, I'll keep going. But then I saw that some other people were really interested and could talk a lot more about it. So I decided, well, maybe I'll just hang around and chat and see how things go.
Yeah. So when you guys were, let's bring this around a little bit. We talked about Omega Girl. We've talked about some of the stuff. But when you guys were coming up with Captain Stupendous, right? Obviously.
As a matter of fact, I was about to share this.
Ooh. Let me get you there.
Yeah. Oop, thought I shared it. Oh, there we go.
Obviously, he's your in Super School. He's your Superman, right? But he's also awful. he's tick-like, right? In a lot of ways, where he intends good, but because of his lack of self-awareness, ends up in that.
His lack of self-awareness and his ego.
When you guys were coming up with that, was that mostly your contribution, or was that Twitless, or was that a mutual thing? How'd you guys put that together?
That was Super Dickery. If anyone remembers the website, Superman is a Dick. That was Captain Stupendous was basically a distillation of all of those comic book covers and panels of Superman just being taken out of context and being absolutely awful. And so we basically took that and made it into a character.
Jimmy Olsen, Aquaman, only one of you can have this glass of water.
Right, yeah.
But with a heart of gold.
One of those things being, I don't know if you remember a certain page on that was Stupor Powers.
Yeah.
And it was, I would say 65% of them at least, in him just coming up with some random power out of nowhere.
Yes, that's right. Where
which we ended up kind of including in this comic as Twitless brilliantly early on came up with the line, "Don't try to lie to me. I have X-ray vision." And ever since then, every couple of months, we'll find an excuse to throw another one in there. With like
the powers that don't quite make sense.
Hearing, time strength. Yeah, like he'll just make this stuff up.
In the Stupor Powers thing, it was Superman just making up powers as he needs them. And there was one of them, he was weaving a wedding dress, and he says, "With my super weaving power." Right. And one of them was his
super friction.
Super weaving power. He had super counting. Like
don't forget super ventriloquism.
Yeah, exactly. Everything he did, it had to be super attached to it, so that it was like it was that thing, but so much more better. And it was so funny. And again, so that
Spider-Man made fun of it with the power of chest expansion.
Yeah.
I could see an argument for super weaving. Okay, like
my favorite. Okay,
but isn't that just
there's
one?
No, there's one. Okay, so I remember mentioning that there was a strip I was never able to deliver on, and this was the one. So if you go to that website, one of the panels is Superman chucking trees at the ground like missiles.
That's right.
And he's saying, "With my super landscaping power," and he's not super landscaping. He's just taking fully grown trees and he's chucking them like tomahawk missiles at the ground and embedding them into and probably causing more environmental damage than he's actually solving. But that was his super landscaping, and that was the joke I couldn't make work.
I just realized that. Yes,
but
back to the comment about super weaving metal.
Yeah,
Come on, you know this. You know this. According to British Isles folklore, weaving is a superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, like, so magical weaving, right? Obviously, going back to that, you can only weave at a certain speed because of the tensile strength of the stuff you're weaving, unless you had like some type of magical or superpower influence over to stop it from breaking. So, like, I could actually see arguments for super weaving going back into myths.
It's like smithing. It is a superpower.
Yeah.
Being able to do it is magical.
Super intuition, I remember.
That's why there's all specific prayers for the weaving and specific.
Wait, wasn't the joke though, Cartoonicus? Wasn't the joke that it wasn't Supergirl, it was Superboy, who is currently a girl because of some weird shenanigans? So it wasn't actually Supergirl. Yeah, it was actually Superboy who had super intuition, but it was Superboy who thought he was a girl. So like it was like layers of stupid. But yeah, so that's stupendous. We just took everything that we read on and laughed at on that website. We just
note that this is coming from a time when Twitless absolutely despised everything about Superman. He had it on his bucket list to kill him. Somehow, since then, not only Superman but Captain Stupendous has become one of his favorite characters.
I can relate to that. I don't
know what to say.
You look at the first year, not calendar year, but in continuity year of Forces. There's way more Greg stories, just because Chris and I loved Greg so much. But as the year grew on, I really grew a fondness for Chad. So
I've always liked Superman.
Yeah, I think
Valor's actually the first character I ever wrote.
Yeah, Valor's a fun character too, just because of his like the level of naivete and altruism that are like in the middle.
Yeah.
So it's I think he did a really good job of capturing that 9-year-old way of looking at it. So
it's like he's basically a super genius because he functions at a higher level than other people, but he still only has the experience of being 9 years old. So that doesn't really amount to much.
It's like the wisdom of Solomon if you don't know nothing. But well, guys, let's call that a show. I think we've covered it well. Unless there's something else some of you wanted to say.
Read Omega Girl if you like Superman.
That's true. Read Omega Girl if you like Superman. And also, one thing from the chat, Neil said, "There's a Zing too." Yes, it's available on Gumroad. So it's like $2 or something for the digital. So, but yeah, that's the story. New Forces page coming this Friday over on Webtoon. It is amazing. You're gonna love it. You're not prepared for that page. I'm telling you guys. And we just dropped chapter 2 of the Forces, the manga size Forces on Global Comics. You can go catch up there as it goes. And hey, Metal's dropped a thing to go get a print copy of A Hymn of Valor.
Yeah, I will warn people that anything before X Dynamis Chaos episode 4 Fighting for Fall, the colors are a little washed. Because I was still working like in CMYK at the time, and my test prints, they looked really good. I had to completely change the palettes retroactively, so they technically read better on websites, but it's still good. And I refuse to change it, so you can have the original versions if people want them. I'll just have the updated colors in like a volume version later on.
There you go. So, one last note. Neo offers that Riserman could take a Make a Girl on a date if you wanted.
That's great.
So they probably have a lot to talk about. Okay, moving on. Let's call it the show. Next week we are talking about superheroes and the law. Why should you, would you, could you not have superhero registration in your universe, and where is that lore breaking? And we'll talk about that next week. So till then, keep reading comics. And I suggest one of the fine ones we've discussed here tonight, because I'm shameless. Have a good night, everybody. Where's that button? There we go.